We're now standardizing on a minimum of a 1 to 9 risk to reward, and then as wide as you can make that fly. Now, some people, depending on the size of their account, they might not be able to afford a 30 wide SPX, which would be a $300 debit for that. And it might not fit into their risk to reward scenario. You could trade the E-mini S&P, which is about half the size, so that 3 wide would actually be $1.50 or $150 for a 30 wide, because the E-mini S&P, its multiplier is half that of the SPX. You could go the XSP, which is 1/10 the size of the SPX. So that would mean if you're putting on what would be the same equivalent width as a 30 wide, would actually be 3 wide. And so then it could cost you just $3 or 30 cents for that. So that would be an equivalent, 30 cents off of 3 wide. That would also be 1/10 of the width. And when you do the math, you know that the max profit of a butterfly is the width minus the debit. So you take that, say 30 wide, minus the debit of $3. So that would leave 27. So 27 would be the maximum profit that you could make on that. Then what you do is you take the debit and divide it into 27, and it goes into it 9 times. So that's how you get when you put on a 10% debit of the width, automatically turns into a 1 to 9 risk to reward. So it's kind of like the magic number that's been traded for many, many years. And it is what we ultimately grew to, and it seemed to be the optimal trade. But it got me thinking. I started at 1 to 5, moved to 1 to 7. Now I've gone to 1 to 9, which I probably should have started at from the beginning, but it was a learning process. And then when we put on the Batman, we were wondering, well, how do we handle that? Do we make them both 1 to 9? Now our risk is a bit bigger in the middle, and how do we handle the risk management there? Or do we spread them out and make them wider and just go for broke? And so what we're finding, here's the interesting part. It seems that I don't know what the upper limit is. In fact, some of my best trades have been way outside of that limit. Like instead of taking a 1 to 9 risk to reward, I would take a 1 to 15. And instead of doing a 30 wide, I would do a 40 or a 50 wide. Now, when you put a trade on like that, most retail traders will look at that and say, that's so far out of the money. How am I ever going to make profit? But that's the magic of this. You don't have to get inside the profit tent in order to make money. You just have to be somewhere along the spectrum between where you entered and towards the fly to make money. Now, of course, as time drones on in the trading day, that profit curve, that real-time profit curve is going to start converging into the fly. And so you may be chasing that for a little while. However, there's many opportunities in different portions of the day to take significant profit. And the profit that you can take is often usually 100, 150, 200% return on the risk that you take. And if you get inside of the fly, inside of the profit tent, then you can see returns as much as 300, 500, or 1,000% or even more. In fact, my biggest trades now are when I decided to experiment with this, moving them further out of the money, getting a smaller debit, which would result in a larger risk to reward, and widening the fly width. And my last biggest trade, I had put on a trade, I think it was a 1 to 19 or something like that. My debit was like $2.50, and the potential reward was, I don't know, $4,800 or something like that. And I moved into the fly. It was near the end of the market. There was also some resistance. It couldn't seem to make it any further. But off of that $250 trade, I made about $2,100. So that's close to a 1 to 10 return on my risk. The cool part was the market could have just as easily gone another 10 or 15 points higher. And that $2.50 or $250 risk that I took that returned $2,100 could just as easily had returned $4,000 or $5,000 or even $6,000, well, close to $6,000. That's just spectacular when you think about it. The risk that you're taking versus the potential reward. Now, I guess what this comes to is that I don't know what the upper limit is. Should we be going for 50 wide as a general course of action? Should we be looking at 1 to 9, 1 to 15, 1 to 20? Will there be some sort of optimal result that will work for most markets, or should we tailor it for specific type of markets, etc.?